Test, test. 1, 2, 3. Test, test.
Part of summer is swimming in my pool.
Oh, summer. It sounds good right now after what we just experienced, doesn't it? Grilling out, lawns being mowed, and pools opening. These are some of the things we expect with summer.
Summer series. Hi guys. Hello there, and welcome back to the summer series interview with teacher Michael. If you can't already tell from the title, this is part 2 of an interview with Michael Venn. He is a brand ambassador with VIPkid, of course a teacher with VIPkid, and an all-around very interesting guy. I got to sit down and chat with him for quite a while, so I broke this episode into 2 parts for you. If you have not already, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to part 1 just to jog your memory. In part 1, Michael and I discussed all about how he went to circus school. Yes, circus school, and how that translated into becoming a VIPkid teacher, what led him down that path, all of the different side hustles that he does, and just had a good time talking about, his backstory, where he's from, what he does now, all of that good stuff. So I highly encourage you to go check that out before you listen to part 2. So if you're here, stop, go back, listen to part 1, and then come on into part 2. We will be picking up where we left off. So we left off talking about how Michael took that puppetry skill that he had and took it into the VIPkid classroom with him. In part 2, we will be discussing how Michael became a brand ambassador, a little bit more in depth about his puppeteering and where he's gotten to travel to, and teacher Michael, if you did not know this, got to sit down with Jessie Chen, the co-founder of VIPkid itself, and I was able to pick his brain a little bit about how that went and how he came up with his questions for that interview. This was at the VIPkid Journey conference in Las Vegas, so the most recent one. So if any of those things interest you, which I hope they do, then make sure you keep listening. And without further ado, let's go ahead and here's part 2 coming at ya. Started, since you didn't have any kind of, you had a little bit of an educational background because you had taught children circus skills and things like that, right? But you didn't have a lot of traditional educational background. Did you first start with the younger kids, or did you start with older kids? How did you approach it?
I just kind of started, and I don't know, I just let it happen. And I think back at that time, teachers got certified maybe a little bit quicker for more levels. So I've been certified for level 2 to 5 from the get-go, and I've never actively tried to certify for any other level. So I'm just in 2 to 5, and I just let it happen. Whatever kids came to me, I just said, okay, this is the student I'm going to teach, and this is the age that they are, and this is the ability that they're at. And that was helpful for me because I got exposed to having to extend my lesson to kids who were really advanced and having to simplify things for kids who had no vocabulary in English. So I just kind of let it happen as it happened, and it's been working, I guess.
Well, I think that's an enviable confidence that you came in with. I know a lot of people, they're worried. They're like, oh, I should only do level 2 or 3 because I don't know a lot of grammar, or, oh, I'm a teacher, and I taught older kids, so I don't know if I could teach the little ones. I should just teach the older ones. So I think that's a really great attitude to bring to it. You just teach what's there.
Yeah, well, it's something kind of that I think I learned. If there's one thing above anything else that I learned from circus school or from being a circus practitioner, is that things that seem impossible really quickly become possible when you start doing them. And so the first time that I wanted to juggle knives, I was scared. I'm like, oh, that's such a terrifying thing. And then you just do it. You flip the knife the first time, and the first time you catch it, you go, oh, well, it wasn't really that hard. Like, it's not actually that dangerous. These aren't sharp. We create these sort of fear things in our head when there's actually nothing to be scared of. So I learned that, and I take that same mentality towards teaching and towards any other thing that I'm afraid of doing, whether it's the podcast or starting a YouTube channel or anything else that I've done that I've been scared of. I keep reminding myself that you're going to be way less scared the second you start doing it. And so I actively force myself to do those things that I'm scared of, just to get rid of the fear as quickly as possible.
Yep. I 100% agree. 100%. Well, so you started with VIPkid. Well, okay, so start from the beginning. So we started at a circus school, came through puppetry, started with VIPkid, and you eventually became a brand ambassador. How did that come about? Because you were kind of one of the OG ones. There might have been a few people before you, but you were in there pretty early. So how did that come about for you?
So the way that it happened is I just started making videos for YouTube to help other teachers. And my initial intention behind that was A, to help teachers, but B, to try and drum up some referral business. I kind of wanted to get into referring. And I went online and I saw, really at the time, Nancy Taylor was the one who was making the most amount of videos to help other teachers. And so I kind of looked at what she was doing and said, well, why don't I try to do that in my own way? Like, let's look at the skill set that I have and what I can offer to this teaching community. And I just started making videos. And really, that was the goal for me, was to help to take the skills that I had and try and share them with other teachers. And I just started making videos. And, they started out, they weren't, in my opinion, they weren't that great now that I look back on them, and slowly they got a little bit better and a little bit more helpful. And then Nancy Taylor, I guess she was approached to become a brand ambassador, and she put my name forward as, hey, if you're looking for other people who are making things on the internet to help teachers, why don't you check out Michael's channel? So huge thank you to her. I owe her, a huge amount of gratitude for putting my name forward. And then someone from the team reached out and said, I see that you're already making videos. Is this, brand ambassador program, as we start to develop it, is it something you'd be interested in doing? And to me, it was a no-brainer. Like, I was already making videos. So basically they just said, can we pay you to do the thing that you're already doing? And I said, absolutely, you can.
Yeah, no brainer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so when people watch your videos, you kind of mentioned this before, you kind of said you already had those editing skills and some other kind of content creation skills. Where did you learn those? Because I don't think they teach you those in circus school.
They didn't teach me that at circus school. It's kind of funny when I really think about the root of it. It goes back to me being a terrible and lazy student. And so when I was at university, me and a bunch of buddies, every time we had an English paper that we had to do, we would approach the English teacher and say, do you mind if can we make a video instead of doing this essay? And at first she was a little reluctant, and she kind of said, I guess, fine. As long as you demonstrate to me that you are familiar with the material and that you've learned something, go ahead, make a video. And I didn't know how to make a video at the time. So the bunch of us, just 5 really bumbling buffoons, were just with a video camera and a little editing program trying to figure it out so that we didn't have to write an essay. And then from there, as I started getting into juggling a little bit more, I kind of wanted to make my own juggling videos to share online. And so again, I found myself working with a camera and working with an editing program. And it just kind of evolved like that. It was just me wanting to not write essays and document my progress as a juggler and just really practical things. And then a couple years later, I kind of found myself with like, oh, I have a little bit of skill with this camera. And then when I went to the circus program or the circus company in New York, I kind of approached them and said, hey, you guys are doing great work in the schools, but have you ever thought of making tutorials for YouTube to further your mission of teaching circus skills to people? So they kind of allowed me to do that as well as I was, teaching in the classroom, but also creating circus tutorial videos outside of that. So for me, it's kind of been a slow and long evolution to get to a point where I feel somewhat comfortable with the camera and in the editing program. But again, like everything for me, I'm not a master of anything that I do. So I always am approaching it like a student, and I'm always trying to get better and trying to get my videos tighter, and I'm trying to get my incidental language, as it were, to be a little bit less and just get to the point. I have a tendency to ramble as I'm doing right now.
That's okay. I do too.
So I'm trying to improve,
Yep. That's why I started a podcast and not a YouTube channel, because 5 minutes, I can't do that.
It's hard. It really is hard.
It is hard. Well, I think that's kind of like, it's something that somebody will come across a video or something. And I know I used to do this, and you'll see and you'll be like, oh my gosh, that person is just like amazing. Like they just must be so much better than me. But I think everybody kind of goes through that process of learning. Like you have to start somewhere. And so I think that's something that people need to remember when they're trying to start something, whether it's a YouTube channel or an Instagram or, whatever you want to do. I think it's important to remember that everybody starts somewhere. We all have a little bit of like a cringy video in our past or something.
Yes, we do.
Good thing we can delete
I'm just thinking, I just thought of a dozen of my own.
Well, okay, so we've gone through VIPkid. I am really interested in hearing more about the puppeteering that you do. I know that's now you said it's kind of like another side hustle for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do mostly educational puppeteering, or do you do like puppeteering shows for like adults, or like what do you?
Right. So the company that I work for is called Mermaid Theatre of Nova Scotia. Okay. And they've been operating since I think 1974 or something like that. The company's evolved a little bit, but in the last 20 years or so, they've really been focused on doing classic children's stories. So for anyone out there who has kids, who's sort of in that world of children's literature right now, I'm thinking of books like The Very Hungry Caterpillar, Goodnight Moon, The Runaway Bunny, Rainbow Fish, Guess How Much I Love You. There's like so many of these classic children's stories. And so that's kind of what the company has been focused on. And sort of their flagship style, if they had one, would be glow-in-the-dark puppetry. So when I perform, I'm wearing a black mask with black gloves on, all black costumes. And when the black lights get turned on and they shine on the set and the puppets that have all been painted with this fluorescent paint, all of the puppets really start popping out. And we, as the performers, disappear into the shadows. So, as I'm sure you can imagine, you can create all kinds of magical elements because the kids and the adults, the audience can't see the mechanisms that are making everything happen. So you can hide things in the shadows and you can reveal things spontaneously, and it really confuses. Like honestly, it confuses not only the kids but the parents. We can hear them. We do a Q&A at the end of all of the performances, and sometimes we have adults that are like, how on earth did you make that part happen? So that's like, to me, that's awesome, creating those elements of magic on stage. But that's kind of what it is. It's glow in the dark children's stories.
Well, that sounds really cool. I wish I lived closer to Nova Scotia so I could experience it.
Well, here's the nice thing about it is that the company really doesn't perform much in Nova Scotia. We tour all over the United States. I personally have performed in about 35 different states. So if you are interested in going to see a show, I would visit the Mermaid Theater website to find out when they're going to be in the area. We've been in, I can't even list all the places because it's almost everywhere in the States.
Well, I have a young child, so maybe I'll have to check that out. And if anybody else has a young child that's listening, they should check it out too.
Yeah, no doubt.
But so you get to travel a lot with your puppeteering, right?
Yes.
Do you usually keep up with VIPkid while you're traveling? Like, do you teach while you're on the road, or do you take a break?
I usually take a break. I've kind of dabbled in teaching while I've been traveling just for the experience of it. And also because I definitely consider myself a bit of a traveler, a bit of a wanderer. And that's something I want to do more of in the future. So for me, it was important to kind of develop a skill set as a minimalist teacher or as a traveling teacher. So I wanted, going back to this idea of doing things that you're scared of, like I kind of was scared of teaching from a hotel or not having my background or not having all my props. But I challenged myself on a couple of my tours to open up my time slot, teach from a hotel, see if I could make it work. And I found out that I could make it work, but because of the nature of how we travel and the fact that I'm not really in control of my time as much when I'm working with the theater company, my schedule was unreliable. I had to cancel a few classes sometimes because all of a sudden we weren't staying at this place. We had to drive for 8 hours to get to our next venue, and I had scheduled classes. So to me, it was too inconsistent to do it in that way. But I definitely did teach a little bit when I was traveling.
And from your experiences traveling and teaching, if you could take one thing away from it, what would it have been? Like, what would you tell someone who is scared to travel and teach?
It's really that you don't need as much as you think you need. You don't need all your props and your background, least of all your background. Mm-hmm. I think people sometimes stress about what their classroom looks like on camera. I really try to stress, like, what are you doing as the teacher? Like, what is your energy level? Like, how engaging are you? And so, I found myself in one place where my background was just a white wall. And so I thought, well, I could just put on like a really colorful t-shirt and that will be enough. That'll be the pop of color that will sort of make it bright and friendly for the kid. And then above and beyond that, I'll just use my little hand puppet and I'll just be as enthusiastic as I can be. So I really think that people need less than they think they need. And then the other part of that is just to get used to like creating better lighting in the place that you're in, whether it's taking a lampshade off or gathering all the lights in the Airbnb or the hotel room or sitting as close to a window as you can. The better you can understand lighting, I think the better it is, because to me, the worst scenario for me is I've got everything ready and I turn on my camera and I'm ready to teach and like, it just looks so like dark and dingy and then I'm in the class and I can't do anything to fix it in the moment. So lighting and minimalism, really.
You might look like a crazy person with all the lamps around you, but I mean, it'd be worth it.
True. I try to keep them out of frame. But you do what you can to make it work.
I'm sure they appreciate it.
Hope so.
Well, so with all of your travels, what do you think is your favorite place you've visited so far?
So it's always hard to say. It's always hard to pinpoint it. But to me, I always go back to experiences that I may never get again, or experiences that were as far from my normal life as possible. So certainly one of those that sticks out for me was taking the Trans-Siberian Railway across through Russia and Mongolia and China, Mongolia, and across Russia. That wasn't related to puppetry or VIPkid at all. That was just at the end of my year teaching English in Korea. Instead of flying home, this was one of those bucket list things. I was like, well, I don't have to fly home. I could take a train. So I took a train really into Eastern Europe and then ended up flying home from London. So that for me has been amazing. And then beyond that, just being in China. Like, I've been to China now 2 times. One of those times was just on my own. One of them was through the theater company, and I ended up going to VIPkid head office, and I met one of my students. But to me, that really hit home, like how far our personalities are traveling throughout the day. Like to get on a plane and travel so far to China and be in a place that is so different from where I'm from. And that was really highlighted by like not even being able to phonetically read something from a menu. You know, you can be in a place like Spain or Portugal or France or something like that, and at least the alphabet is familiar, but to be there with the Chinese characters, and I'm just like, I'm a fish out of water here. And it really helped me understand that that's probably what all of the kids are feeling when they come on to the platform and they're like, geez, this teacher's just blah, 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 blah. Like, what are they talking about? Like, it really put me in their shoes. So that was really good just for developing a little bit of empathy and understanding for where the kids are coming from.
Yeah. You know, I don't think I've ever thought about that either. Like, I mean, obviously I understand like our characters are so different, but I never put myself flip-flopped into their shoes. So that's really interesting to think about. Like, as much as Chinese characters are confusing to me, English characters are probably just as confusing to them. So yeah, that's
for sure.
crazy to think about. So do you think that you're traveling and everything that you've gotten to experience, whether it was through VIPkid or through puppetry or just going on your own, do you think that's helped you in the classroom in any way?
I think so, yeah. I think so. Like, I find that when you travel, you're always a student. Like you're always trying to figure something out. There's always a problem that you're trying to solve. So I really think that it's helped me become a lifelong student and always put myself in the shoes of the person who's trying to do something that they don't know how to do, just because I've been in that situation so many times. When I'm at home, like life is easy. I know where the grocery store is. I know like where the restaurants are. I know where the lake is. I know how to get the bus, and like everything is familiar. And I love travel for that reason. It always puts me out of my comfort zone and puts me in that student mindset. And I think that's something that I bring to the classroom every day. Like I think of myself in the student shoes going, how can I make this easier for them?
So speaking of travel, and I'm going to wrap up soon because I know I've been talking for a long time. I don't want to take too much of your time. But recently you traveled to the Journey conference in Las Vegas, right?
I did.
And most importantly, you got to meet Cindy, me, and Jessie Chen, right?
I did, yes.
How was that for you? Was that your first Journey conference?
So it was my first Journey conference, and for a couple of years anyway, I've been seeing people posting photos and videos about it, and I was always like, I feel really left out. So it was super cool to go and like meet so many people in person, so many people that I've connected with, like through my podcast or through my YouTube channel or just on Instagram, just from the comments and things like that. So that was really cool meeting everyone in person. And then, yeah, I met Cindy Me like very briefly. We just had a chance encounter in the hallway, and she was very present throughout the whole conference. Like I could see her making an effort, and there was always someone with her kind of like wanting to, Cindy, we have to go to this thing. And she was always stopping to take a photo, to ask a question, to engage with the teachers. So I was super impressed by how present she was at the conference and how dedicated she was to interacting with the teachers. So yeah, I saw her in the hallway and just said, hey, here's my chance. Like, hey, I'm one of the brand ambassadors. My name's Michael. Can I ask you a question on camera? And she was very gracious. I know she had to go somewhere, and she still made time to make a little cameo in the vlog. So that was super cool. And then sitting down with Jessie Chen was another great moment because me, for one, like, you know, I had this super embarrassing moment when I was reaching out to the VIPkid staff, the people who sort of deal with the brand ambassadors. I was like, do you think I could interview Cindy? And they were like, maybe, maybe not. She's super busy, but how about Jessie? And I kind of was like, who's Jessie? and so someone wrote me back and was like, she's the co-founder of the company. I was like, oh my gosh, I just put my foot in my mouth. Yes, good job, Michael. So I did a little bit more research about her, and I hadn't heard from her very much. So I thought it was really cool to sit down with her. I just, time is tight at these sorts of things. So I only had a couple questions for her, but it was great to hear about, her approach to building the company and working with Cindy and sort of the patience that it takes to build a company like VIPkid. And then she also had some good advice for new teachers. Like, that was one of the questions that I really wanted to ask her because it comes up so often for me, and I'm always struggling to answer it for new teachers when they say, like, Michael, like, I've tried everything. I've updated my photo, I've redone my video, I've tweaked my bio, I've taken workshops, I'm opening every single slot, and I'm still not getting students. Like, what do I do? And I still don't know the answer for everyone. Like, I'm still learning what else people can do. So I wanted to ask her that. And I was thankful to have the opportunity to say to her, like, so many people are struggling to just get their first student. So I wanted to know from her perspective, like, what was it like for her and Cindy? Because they had to do the exact same thing with the company. They had to get their first student, and then they had to get their second student. And now the company's at 500,000 students, and they're continuing to go. So I wanted to know from the horse's mouth, like, what was the mindset required to build a company from 1 student to 500,000 students? And how does that relate to teachers right now who are trying to get their first student? So I was just really thankful for that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing opportunity. I would have been so nervous that I probably would have almost thrown up. But so were you nervous at all?
I was a little bit nervous, but thankfully, it was so quick. The way that it happened is that I kind of just got into go mode, and I just kind of went for it. And, to be honest, just being a podcast host myself, like, I had a bunch of experience asking questions and sitting and listening. Like, that has been the hardest thing for me, like, doing these types of interviews, is like keeping my mouth shut. I love talking. I mean, I don't know if you can tell on this podcast. I'll talk all day. So just to ask a question and sit back and just listen. Thankfully I had some experience, and I'm still trying to develop that skill as a podcast host and just as a listener in general.
Yeah, it's a lot harder than you would think it would be. You listen to other podcasts and it sounds so effortless, and then you go to do it and it's like,
So true, though. So true.
Where did you get your questions from? Were they ones that you just thought of on your own, or did you reach out on any kind of platform, or?
So I don't think I did reach out ahead of time for that specific interview. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I had about 8 questions. I didn't know how much time I was going to have I didn't know if I was going to get to interview Cindy, and I didn't know how much time I would have with Jessie. So I had about 8 or 9 questions. And then on the spot, because time was tight, I just kind of had to cut it down really quickly to 3 questions. So just on the fly, I kind of just picked what I thought were interesting questions, or something that was kind of relevant to just me and my personality, and just went for it.
Well, I think you did a great job. I said,
thank you.
I would have needed some kind of container beforehand.
Thankfully, I didn't. I kept all the vomit inside.
And you're a performer, right? So you're used to the nerves.
It's true.
Do you ever get nervous still about performing or teaching classes, or?
I do. It's kind of this excited nervousness. The only time I get nervous is when I'm unprepared. Mm-hmm. And to me, like, that's something that I've learned early on, is the more practice you can do, the more prepared you are, the more you'll still get nervous, but the more easily you can turn the nervousness into excitement. It's only when I'm like really, really unprepared for something that I get desperately nervous. Yeah, so I try to be prepared for stuff.
That's probably a good tip.
Yeah, not bad.
All right, well, I think that's all that I have for you, question-wise. But I always like to ask before I go, is there any kind of inspiration or word of wisdom that you'd like to put out there in the universe for everyone's ears to hear? I know that's kind of on the spot, sorry.
Sure, yeah, I don't know. I'm always humbled when anyone will ask me a question like that. I'm always learning from other people. So to me, if I had a piece of wisdom, it would be just to be curious and never stop exploring and to follow your own interests. To me, that has been the most, it's where I found the most fulfillment in my life, is just being curious about things and pulling the thread and just seeing where it will go. So if I could leave anybody with that, it's like, if you have an inclination to do something, whether it's teaching, whether it's learning more about puppetry, whether it's getting into cooking, whatever it is, if you're interested in that thing, do it.
I think that's great words of wisdom. Who said that? I think that's like a famous quote, right? Like, stay curious. I don't know who said it.
I don't know. Someone.
Is it the Dos Equis man? Stay interesting. I don't know.
Maybe that could have been it.
Well, thank you very, very much for sitting. Well, sitting, standing. I don't know if you're sitting or standing. I'm standing.
You know what? I'm sitting on a suitcase right now.
Oh, well, that's
kind
interesting.
Of precariously propped up, so I'm kind of half sitting, half standing. But thank you for asking me to be on the podcast. This has been really fun.
Yeah, thank you for chatting, and it was so nice to meet you.
You too.
All right, guys, so that is it with my interview with teacher Michael. Once again, I just want to say that he's a great guy. It was so nice to sit down with him and talk with him. It was fun to have somebody else who also has a podcast on the podcast, because he talked sufficiently and had really good audio, and it was great. So not only was that a great part of it, but also it was just interesting to speak with him. I can see why he's a brand ambassador. He's a great face for the company. He's always positive. He's got a great attitude about everything, and he's super interesting. It was so nice to hear about his puppeteering, about his circus school, about the kind of attitude that he takes into his classroom, which is something that I think is enviable from everyone who's a VIPkid teacher. We can all learn from each other, but he definitely brings a kind of energy to the classroom that I know I strive for as a teacher, and I'm sure that a lot of you do. So maybe hearing a little bit about his teaching philosophy will help you bring that into your classroom. Like we talked about today, remember, just go do it. Just be you. Just do your thing and approach it with an open mind and know that you can be successful. I think that's like a big thing that we took away from this interview, is just, if you're going to do something, do it to the best of your ability and enjoy yourself while you're doing it. Make sure you check out Teacher Michael's podcast as well. It is called Extra Credit with Teacher Michael. He is currently taking a break, so there are no new episodes out in like a second season for him, but he has lots of old episodes that you can listen to after you listen to the At Home Educator podcast, of course. I will leave a link to his podcast below as well. So make sure you check that out. Once again, I want to leave you with a task today. I would like you to go ahead and make sure that you are following me on Instagram. If you did not know, I am mostly active on my Instagram. I do all kinds of things like add tips to my stories, of course post when there's new episodes for podcasts. I also will post the schedule for my podcasts on Instagram. So if you're not already following me there, it is at the At Home Educator. There's a link in the description as well, but make sure that you are following me on Instagram so that you can stay updated on everything. All right, guys, so that is it for today, and I will see you next week back with another episode of the summer series. We have 2 weeks left. 2 weeks. This has flown by. So I will see you guys next week. In the meantime, remember to teach regularly, play often, and live your best life. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of this podcast. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe and click the bell so you are notified when I upload a new episode. Also, you can check out my website by using the link in the description below, and all of my social media. I am on Instagram and Facebook, and I would love to meet you on there as well. And if you're interested, you can check out some of my older videos and my new videos here and here. Thank you for watching. Bye. We're gonna say bye-bye. Bye-bye. Oh, there it is. Bye-bye.